Welcome, deep divers. Today, we're really diving into something that I think will genuinely shift how you see weight loss. Forget the usual stuff calories, carbs, sheer willpower. Our sources today suggest maybe we've been looking at it all wrong. It's not just about a medication, it's more like, one source calls it a decoding of emotional amnesia. We're focusing on Dan Hollis, who has this really quite revolutionary take on semaglutide and what it actually does. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how Hollis just completely reframes it. It's less about what semaglutide does physiologically, though. Okay, quick recap. It mimics a gut hormone, makes you feel full, slows digestion, helps blood sugar, the GLP-1 stuff. That's the baseline. But Hollis says the real impact. It's psychological. It's what it reveals. He puts it pretty bluntly. Semaglutide gives you silence, and silence gives you truth. So this deep dive, it's really about exploring that space. What happens when the food noise dials down? What stories pop up? And an emotional amnesia point. He's basically saying, look, many people use food to cope, right? For so long, they kind of forget what they were originally coping with. The silence forces that decoding.
That idea, silence giving truth. Wow, that's powerful. So Hollis is arguing the common view that weight struggles are just about food, discipline, whatever. That's missing the point entirely. He says it's about something else we don't like talking about. And semaglutide's role isn't just, curbing appetite in the simple sense. He says it gives you a moment where food stops talking. And for some people, that's the first honest moment they've had in 20 years. So not just eating less, but finding this quiet, which can be unsettling, I guess. It ties into that headline he wrote, which really stuck with me. What if you weren't broken, just confused?
Exactly. And we connect this to the bigger picture. That silence isn't just, your stomach not rumbling. It's a drop in the constant mental noise that shouting for comfort, as he calls it, that drives so much eating. Think about it, that inner chatter demanding a snack or distraction or comfort suddenly goes quiet. That is disorienting. And here's his really critical distinction. People usually don't relapse because they're suddenly starving again when they stop the meds. No, they relapse into confusion. That's the headline, he says, that we all missed.
Confusion. Okay, that's huge. Why confusion, though? What does that actually look like day to day?
Well, it's huge because imagine that relentless drive for food, it's gone, or at least muffled. Suddenly there's this void, this quiet space, and you genuinely don't know what to do with it. Food was the answer for everything, right? Boredom, stress, happiness, sadness. When that go-to coping tool is suddenly less effective, the real feelings that were being masked, they surge forward. And without a plan, without knowing how to handle those feelings, that's the confusion. Hollis thinks people don't fail because the drugs stop working. They fail because no one taught them what to do with the quiet. And that quiet, it can be really frightening. It feels like losing your favorite lie, that quick fix. So what do? You grab what's familiar. Cheese puffs, cheat days, chaos, as he puts it. It's a retreat to known comfort, even if it's unhealthy, because that silent void feels worse. It's the brain scrambling for any old coping pathway.
Ah, okay, so it's not craving the food specifically, but craving the job the food used to do, the distraction, the feeling that clicks. And that leads right into Hals's next big idea, which is just such a powerful distinction. Weight loss is biology. Staying there is narrative.
Wow. That's not just Keki. It reframes the entire long game. You
Yeah.
can change the biology, the scale moves, clothes fit. But what if your story doesn't fit anymore? This brings up something called identity grief, which you really don't hear about much.
You really don't. And identity grief, yeah, it's a major concept in his work. It's that jarring realization, often totally unexpected. The weight came off, then I realized I had no idea who I was without it.
No,
Yeah.
you won't see that in the before and after pics, right? It happens in the quiet, after the applause dies down. For lots of people, their weight wasn't just physical. It was tangled up in their whole identity, how they navigated the world, their defenses, everything.
Yeah.
Losing it can feel weirdly like losing a part of yourself, even a part you hated. It leaves this vacuum.
I can absolutely see how disorienting that would be if your whole struggle defined you, and now the struggle is different, quieter. What fills that gap? What do you do with that new space?
This raises an important question, doesn't it? What does happen when that hunger, that drive, doesn't just poof vanish, but like Dan says, it shapeshifts. It morphs into memory, confusion, space. And here's the crux. If that new space, that quiet where the old comfort-seeking used to live, isn't actively filled with something genuinely nourishing and not just food, well, the craving, maybe not for food, but for something to fill the void, that impulse for comfort, it just comes back. Which reinforces his point again. People don't relapse into hunger. They relapse into confusion. They grab the familiar because the quiet is just too much.
Right. So it's about being intentional, building something new in that space. How does he suggest doing that?
Precisely. It's active. His solution is very clear. You build. You scaffold. You stitch new rituals into old routines. It's like a construction project for your inner self. He sees support therapy, coaching, community, not as a nice to have, but as essential neurobiological scaffolding.
Yeah.
Think about building right. You need that temporary external frame, the scaffold, to build the permanent structure safely inside. This support acts like that for your brain. It helps you build and solidify new, healthier mental pathways and stories when the old ones aren't driving things anymore.
Right.
He's really clear. The real work, the lasting change, it starts not when you begin losing the weight, but when you stop needing food to explain your feelings. When the noise quiets down, your actual self starts talking. You need to be ready to listen and, crucially, ready to build.
That totally reframes it, doesn't it? Away from just a battle of wills to this internal architecture project. You have to deliberately construct things. Okay, and speaking of challenges, let's tackle that word, failure. It carries so much weight, so much shame, especially around weight loss. Feeling weak or undisciplined after a setback. It's so common. But Hollis offers this completely different way to see it.
He really does, and it's so freeing. He says, failure isn't the end. It's a message, a moment of feedback. And sometimes it's the most honest conversation you'll ever have with yourself.
Oh.
That just lifts the shame right off, A slip-up hitting a plateau, it's not a sign you're broken, it's just data. A data point, he calls it, not a shame story.
Mm-hmm.
If you stumble while building that new structure, it's just info saying, hey, maybe this part of the scaffold needs reinforcing, or this new ritual isn't quite solid yet.
Mm-hmm.
He points out that relapse often isn't about weakness. It's just the brain asking for the old familiar rhythm. Trying to just willpower through that, ignore it. That's what leads to breaking, not acknowledging the rhythm and adapting.
That changes the whole emotional charge of a setback, doesn't it? Instead of beating yourself up, it's like, okay, what's this telling me? What does that mean for someone on these meds then?
Well, what's fascinating here is how he flips the script entirely on what failing even means in this context. He argues, most people aren't failing semaglutide. They're failing to prepare for what comes after it. See? It shifts the focus from personal failing to lack of preparation, lack of the right support. Setbacks become signals to strengthen that support system, that neurobiological scaffolding, not reasons to blame yourself. He even calls setbacks sacred if you're willing to look at them with curiosity instead of judgment. This whole approach builds what he calls grace, and grace is built when you respond to a stumble by reaching for a better tool instead of reaching for blame. It acknowledges this is messy human stuff, not linear.
So less about giving up when plan A hits a snag and more about constantly refining that inner architecture, adapting the blueprint.
Yeah. Exactly right. In the end, Dan Hollis's whole message is about building that inner architecture. It's about consciously creating a new framework for yourself, a stronger sense of identity, new daily rituals, a different way of talking to yourself, new memories and narratives that overwrite the old ones. It really is about rewriting the story people were too full to finish.
Yeah.
And he keeps circling back to that core truth. It was never about the food. It was always about something deeper. The goal becomes living more, not just eating less. The meds might give you the quiet, but the real transformation happens in how you choose to fill that silence.
Wow, what a journey through these ideas from Dan Hollis. It's so clear this is way beyond just physical weight loss. It's a fundamentally different way to relate to ourselves, to hunger, emotions, setbacks, all of it. And that core message keeps resonating. This journey isn't about eating less. It's about living more. It's about seeing that quiet may be uncomfortable at first as this incredibly valuable space. Space to build, to discover, to finally rewrite those stories that held us back. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? How might this apply beyond just food or weight?
Dan Hollis's work really serves as this powerful reminder, doesn't it? That maybe the most critical journey we take isn't towards a number on a scale or any external goal, really. It's towards a more authentic story within ourselves. It kind of pushes us to ask, what other kinds of noise in our lives beyond food might be drowning out deeper truths? Distractions, habits, maybe just relentless busyness. What stories are you maybe too full to finish because you haven't allowed for that quiet space? What might you actually hear? What might you discover if you carved out your own moment of stillness? It's just that maybe, just maybe, the biggest changes start not with what we manage to stop doing, but with what we finally begin to hear and understand about ourselves in the silence that follows.